Hello everyone, my name is Maria from nursingpersonalstatement.co.uk, and in this video we are going to work our way through the STARR interview technique and how you can use it to structure your responses during your nursing school interview. Why? Because desire and passion alone is not enough to carry you through your interview. You need to be able to relay your responses in a clear and coherent manner, and the STARR interview technique helps you guys to do that. It provides a systematic way of answering questions. So in this video, we are going to look at what STARR stands for. I'm also going to work you through exactly how to use the STARR interview technique and also touch upon common pitfalls when people do use the STARR interview technique. I'm also going to share with you situations where the STARR technique will be beneficial, because although it is an amazing interview technique, it's not appropriate for every question that you may be asked during your nursing interview. Finally, I'm going to end with one advantage and one disadvantage of using the STARR interview technique. STARR is an acronym. S stands for situation, T stands for task, A stands for action, and R stands for results. S, situation, is where you would describe a situation. Your response in the S part of the STARR interview technique should provide a brief overview, set the scene, explain where you are, who you're working with. Most importantly, what you want to do is describe an event, or describe a challenge, or describe a project. T task is where you talk about the goal and the specific role that you had to complete. Describe the task, what needed to be done, and why. You know, you may want to talk about associated challenges, constraints, any deadlines, any issues. Those are all good examples. A common pitfall associated with A, action, is that people tend to describe what the group did as a whole, or what other people around them did as a whole. The key is to focus on what you did and to focus on your assessment of the situation. Did you take on a leadership role? Did you take on more of a labourer role? Did you take more of a back seat? Did you take more of a researching role? Did you take more of a listening role? That is what you want to relay in A, action. We want to know how you looked at the situation. What was your individual assessment of the situation? There's nothing wrong with saying most people played this role, or the group around me, they thought that this was what, you know, was the main issue. Quite frankly, you telling me what Tom, Dick and Harry did isn't really gonna add anything special to your application. You're in the interview, not Tom, Dick and Harry, so focus on what you did and focus on your assessment of the situation. I keep mentioning it. At this point, I've probably mentioned it about 3 or 4 times, and that is simply because that is such a massive pitfall when it comes to the A part of the STARR interview technique. Think about the impact that your actions had on that project, in that event, or, you know, through that challenge. Think about the results of your individual actions. Again, there's nothing wrong with saying we failed the project or the project went really well. That's fine. You failed the project went really well, it's fine. You could have done something really, really well, but, you know, despite what you did and despite, you know, the input that you put into the project, into the event, or into the challenge, it still could have failed. But that doesn't mean that you failed as an individual. Just because you failed, you know, coming first place, doesn't mean you failed as an individual. You still put in the work, you still went into practice, you still, you know, made sure you were running when it was raining. Just because you failed at something doesn't mean that everything up until that point was a fail. So always make sure you focus on the results of your actions. Let me know in the comments box below if you would like me to do a video that focuses solely on competency-based questions. Examples of competency-based questions and behavioural-based questions include questions such as, tell me about a time you had to teach someone something new, or tell me about a time you worked as part of a team, or when was the last time you were courageous? What did you do and what did it look like? Those are all examples of competency-based questions and behavioural-based questions where the STARR interview technique is probably going to be beneficial. But questions such as, what is your name? What does compassion in nursing practice mean to you? I would not recommend using the STARR interview technique, but there are things that you can take from it and apply to the responses that you give to questions that are not competency based or that are not behavioural based. One advantage of the STARR interview technique is that it provides a clear, systematic way of answering certain types of questions. we have already established that those certain types of questions are competency-based questions or behavioral-based questions. Why? Because those types of questions normally initiate a response that includes some aspect of storytelling. And I'm sure we've all been in situations where we've started to tell someone a story, or a group of people a story, or we've been in situations where somebody's been telling us a story and the story is just all over the place. Like, you can't tell the difference between the beginning, the end, the middle part. It's just all over the place. And at the end of it, you're thinking, why did I say that? Like, what was the point of that? You're thinking, okay, so what are you trying to tell me? Like, what is the point of this story you just told me? What is the point of this project, this event, or this challenge that you've just explained to me? Like, what is the point of it all? Again, you always want to relate it back to nursing practice. You always want to relay it back to the question that you've been asked. There's no point telling a long story if it's not structured. So that's one benefit of using the STARR interview technique. One disadvantage of using the STARR interview technique is that sometimes your responses can come across as robotic. Robotic. STAR. Next question, STAR. It can come across as robotic. One advice that I would give to you all to stop your responses, or just to kind of reduce the likelihood of your responses being so robotic, is make sure you add your personality to your responses. And when I say add your personality, I don't mean you need to become over animated and hand gestures and all of this stuff and smiling and, you know, all of that crazy stuff. I literally just mean make sure your responses are personal to you. The responses that you give to the questions have to be personal to you. They have to be realistic. They have to be an event or project or a challenge that you actually lived through, that you actually experienced. Don't go and Google and start typing in projects that I can talk about in nursing interview. No, because it will come across as phony, because they may ask you follow-up questions to the responses that you have given. Another tip that I would give to you all to stop your responses from sounding robotic and to make sure that, you know, the responses that you give is A1, 10 out of 10, is make sure you practice. There's nothing wrong with, you know, fast forwarding this video and going back to the top of the video and getting a pen and paper and working your way through STAR. I recommend identifying at least, I had to look to make sure it was 3. Make sure you identify at least 3 situations, 1 event, 1 project and 1 challenge, and work your way through every single one of them before you go out for your interview. That way, if you are asked a question where the STARR interview technique would be beneficial, you have 3 examples. You have 3 examples that you can choose from, because I'm sure we've all had a challenging situation, or we've all had an event that we can talk about, or we all have a project that we can talk about. But when you're sat in the interview, it's not always going to be at the forefront of your mind. Go through STAR, STAR with 1, go through STAR with 2, and go through STAR with the 3rd event, project or challenge. And trust me, I am telling you, when you go to your interview and you are asked a question that does require, or that may require you using the STAR interview technique, you will be in a much better situation. You're not going to be, you know, in and ahhing for like, you know, a minute or 2. You're like, oh yeah, I've already practiced this situation, I know. And don't think that, you know, if you practice the 3 situations that you're actually going to use the 3 situations in your interview. You might think of something else in your interview and decide to use that instead. But because you've practiced 3 already, you know exactly how to structure your responses. So in this video, we've looked at what the STAR interview technique. We've also discussed some common pitfalls. I've also told you guys situations where the STAR interview technique will be beneficial, and situations where the STAR interview technique is maybe not your best friend. And then we've finished with highlighting 1 advantage and then 1 disadvantage of using the STAR interview technique and how you can overcome that. Again, thank you guys for watching. If you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like. Visit nursingpersonalstatement.co.uk. On that website, we provide nursing-specific academic results, or nursing-specific academic advice and results, because I've had plenty of people come back to me and tell me, you know, that the advice that we've given them on there has been very helpful. And I'll see you guys in the next video.